Bene, credo siamo aperto ora il collegamento, quindi buon pomeriggio. Buon pomeriggio e un cordiale saluto a voi tutti che siete collegati, un saluto ai nostri ospiti, sia in ambito Italia, così come a livello internazionale. Il mio nome è Carlo Zonato e sono presidente di UPF Italia, che è affiliata alla UPF International. UPF International è una organizzazione non governativa fondata nel settembre del 2005 dai coniugi Moon, il reverendo dottor Sanya Moon e la moglie dottoressa Jahan Moon. L'UPF International è accreditata all'ECOSOC presso le Nazioni Unite con stato consultivo generale ed è oggi presente ormai in 190 paesi nel mondo. Opera per promuovere cultura e percorsi di pace a livello interdisciplinare e interreligioso attraverso una serie di progetti mirati che sono stati avviati nel corso soprattutto degli ultimi anni nell'ambito della governance, della politica, nel mondo delle fedi, nel mondo accademico, nel mondo dei media e della comunicazione, così come nel mondo dell'economia e nel mondo dell'arte e della cultura. L'intento di UPF è instillare l'idea che un mondo di pace e di coesione sociale è possibile se ognuna di queste aree o discipline sociali operano in sinergia con questo obiettivo per il bene della nostra intera famiglia umana. Come UPF Italia, oltre alle tante iniziative in questi diversi settori, abbiamo avviato un progetto di condivisione e di approfondimento sui temi della pace che abbiamo chiamato Peace Forum. Membri del nostro Peace Forum sono appunto esperti delle varie discipline sociali in modo trasversale alle stesse. Oltre alle loro competenze specifiche, sostengono il percorso di UPF proprio come costruttori di pace o come noi li riconosciamo, ambasciatori di pace. Questo è lo spirito che ci accomuna e con il quale cooperano con UPF e di questo davvero siamo loro molto grati. Abbiamo organizzato, nell'ambito del Peace Forum, molti incontri sui temi e sulle situazioni più varie della nostra realtà sociale, del nostro mondo, e che abbiamo aperto da quest'anno anche a livello pubblico. Come avrete visto dal nostro invito, l'incontro di oggi è dedicato al conflitto israelo-palestinese in corso, una situazione che ci sta molto a cuore. E abbiamo con noi oggi due ospiti che sono direttamente collegati a questa situazione, al conflitto in corso. David Fraser Harris, segretario generale di UPF per il Medio Oriente ed il Nord Africa, che condurrà questo dialogo e queste riflessioni con il relatore principale Hod Ben Zvi, presidente di UPF Israele. Non sarà una trattazione, ve lo anticipo, geopolitica o istituzionale sul conflitto in corso, ma con un taglio che già il titolo fa intuire. Non voglio quindi anticipare nulla, ma lascio naturalmente alla loro conversazione. Vi do solo qualche ragguaglio tecnico per gestire questo momento di incontro, che è solo online, sarà registrato ed è anche in streaming sulla pagina Facebook di UPF Italia. Lo staff tecnico provvederà ad inserire nella chat tutte le informazioni che vi sono necessarie. Se poi avete domande verso la parte conclusiva, dopo che c'è stata la relazione principale, vi invitiamo a scriverle nello spazio apposito e provvederemo ad inoltrarle appunto ai nostri ospiti. Per la traduzione in simultanea potete cliccare sull'icona che vedete giù sotto del mappamondo e scegliere quindi l'italiano o inglese secondo vostra necessità. E vado naturalmente ad introdurre ora David Fraser Harris. Vi do qualche ragguaglio su di lui. È il segretario, come dicevo, segretario generale di UPF per il Medio Oriente e il Nord Africa. Dal 1990 al 1997 ha servito l'International Religious Foundation, fondazione religiosa internazionale, come direttore del suo ufficio europeo a Roma e come responsabile della promozione dei programmi interreligiosi, in Europa e includevano sia conferenze che progetti internazionali del servizio interreligioso giovanile. Dal 1997 al 2012 ha vissuto con la sua famiglia a Damasco, in Siria, dove ha insegnato inglese e ha viaggiato spesso per sostenere i programmi UPF in Libano, Giordania, Turchia e a volte in Egitto, Marocco e le nazioni del Golfo. Oggi continua a sostenere questi programmi dalla sua residenza vicino ad Edimburgo. E con questo, ringraziando David Fraser Harris, gli lascio sicuramente la parola. Prego, David.
Grazie Carlo. Sono molto contento di poter partecipare a questo incontro, però da ora in poi parlerò in inglese. Welcome everybody. Thank you very much for this kind introduction, Carlo. I'm going to say a few words at the beginning before we come to our main speaker. We are dealing with a tragic situation, and for everybody, it's very hard to find hope. Yet, that is what we are speaking about today. I want to congratulate UPF Italy on your title, or rather your series title, Becoming Peacemakers. I think that's what this session should be about. If the bombing stopped now, if the weapons disappeared now, it would be a relief for the whole world, but it would not be peace. Today, we want to look forward and we want to look deeper. And I have to prove I know a little bit about Italy by referring to Luigi Pirandello. Speaking of how to deal with suffering, at one point he said the way to deal with suffering is to look at it through a telescope inverted, so that the painful realities of our life look very distant and small compared to ourselves. We certainly want to take a different perspective in our discussion today. We will hear the perspective of somebody who's been at the center of this conflict zone for all his life. And for most of that life, he's been working towards peace. If that's what you're doing and you see today's reality, you can understand that it's heartbreaking. So our conversation today is not an easy one. But I think before I introduce the speaker, I'd like to introduce a little bit more what UPF has been doing. So I'd like you to have a look at this short 4-minute video, which talks about some of UPF's work during the last 20 years in the Middle East. So let's see the video now.
Peace is spiritual. And you cannot have people who are spiritually dead, who view things only in a physical realm, achieve a spiritual result.
If we believe that the Jewish people has come back to its old homeland, then it's also part of God's plan that the Palestinian people are here.
The UPF are making the most important activity for the peace in the Middle East. I never know about any other non-governmental organization which have this commitment and this massive effort to close people from all the Middle East and to become neighbors, friends, peace fighters.
When Father Moon began the Middle East Peace Initiative in 2003, his desire was to promote dialogue, mutual respect and cooperation among Jews, Christians, and Muslims as brothers and sisters.
Religion and interfaith issues are becoming increasingly important to the international relations community and the diplomatic community. and simultaneously is very important for religious leaders not simply to be well-versed in their scriptures and beautiful and pious sayings, but to be grounded in the realities of this world.
I believe in all the religion, and I don't feel that there is a difference between any religion. We create this difference because we are trying to have power. So religious, for them, is power.
We decided that we would engage in a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift. And that we would look at the cross, yes, as being an important and sacred instrument to us as Christians, but at the same time, was it worth clinging to that symbol as a stumbling block to creating a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood with our Jewish brothers and sisters?
The point will come, I hope, in a very close future, when the track 2 diplomacy will connect to the track 1. But when it happens, I want to build in a whole new concept so that these things can work together, so that that gap between where we have to go and where we are can be narrowed in, and we can create a true peace process.
I am Muslim, and he's Jewish, and he's my brother, and I love you, Michael. And all you said is going to my heart, and I am with you for this peace process.
I express to all my beloved Christian friends
שיותר גדול וחשוב מהקבועה של הצלב זה הפתיחה של הצלב החדש של החיבוק.
even more important than bearing his love is opening his hand, extending them, and the cross which embraces everyone. That is of greater importance. That is what he's doing right now.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that. Now it's time to meet our speaker. Welcome, Hod. Nice to have you with us. Hod and I go back quite a long time. I think we've been working in parallel for at least 27 years, since the time when our family moved to Syria. So we moved into the Middle East. Of course, we could not meet directly at that time because Syria and Israel don't permit that. But we had the same heart of finding ways to peace from different sides of the same region. Hod has been a pillar of our unificationist community in Israel over this time, in addition to being the chair of UPF Israel. In a way, Hod and I go back 45 years because we first met unificationism in the same place in California in the 1970s. So there's a lot that we can share in understanding of each other, which goes beyond the events that we face. I feel quite privileged to be able to hear his words with you. I think you will enjoy them. Thank you for taking your time to join us. And I promise you, this is not going to be about events and actions. It's going to be looking a little bit more deeply at what is it that really makes for the building of peace. So, Hod, the floor is yours. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, David, for your kind introduction and very important opening remarks that help us tune in and focus on the issue at hand. Also, I'm very grateful for UPF Italy, Carlo, and the rest of the team. I think you've been doing real fine work over the years, and I had the opportunity to work together with you and Soccer for Peace and other projects. And I think I've been really nurtured also by your efforts to always contribute, always to be there, and to support our work in the Middle East. So a big thank you for UPF Italy and San Marino. I'd like to begin with sharing a little bit about my background, just as we can tune in and feel more comfortable with one another. I know there are many friends joining this webinar, and also hope to be new friends that joined today. So a little bit about my background. My parents, both who passed away, were Holocaust survivors. They came right after the end of World War II. They tried to immigrate to Israel. They're caught and they're stopped. They had to stay another year in Cyprus, and then only to come to Israel on the eve of establishing the young nation, and thrown into what Israelis called the Independence War, and for the Palestinians often called the Nakba. This experience of being born to Holocaust survivors made me think about the need to stop such painful experiences. At first, maybe the thought was, well, what can I do in my country? But quickly, I came to understand that we have to provide conditions for all humankind not to fall into that saddest event of human being clashing into one another in such a sorrowful way. So that in a way shaped my childhood. And the other thing is that I was born in 1957, just kind of at the end of the 56 war. 1967 was the Six-Day War. I was 10 years old then. And then in 1973, the Yom Kippur War. Again, I was a young student, and the first memories that I had was bringing wounded people from helicopters into hospitals. I was volunteering, and I was shocked to see the devastation of war. And so throughout my life, on average, every 10 years or so, there was another large conflict or even war, Lebanon war, etc. And growing in that way, it seemed to be almost normal, you can say, that every now and then you will face a major war, and in between small confrontations. That actually not reasonable at all, but that's the background I grew up with. So this can lead you to either become very pessimistic, bitter, critical, or it can spur you to think of what you can do as an individual to change that and to bring an opportunity for a better world. So today I want to share with you, not as an expert talking and analyzing everything from, various military and economic point of view, or delve into geopolitical explanations, but just to be kind of a witness, to walk with you in this situation that we experience, and perhaps through our sharing together, we can all make some steps in our life that will help better or alleviate the situation. The Middle East in general, and particularly the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, is a very complex issue because it involves history, very different narratives that people have about where they came from and how they see the future, the territorial disputes, to some extent even religious disputes, although I believe they're not the main part, and certainly geopolitical interests that are laying heavy on what is taking place. So we have to take that in account and see the larger picture, and I'll come back to it from a couple of angles. The last 7 months to this day, today's 7th of May, have been truly devastating. We have seen tremendous loss of life. Many, many people that have been injured in this past clash here with Israelis and Palestinians. There have been people that are still abducted. And many more people are traumatized. Sometimes they're not counted as casualties, but the toll of war is beyond understanding. So this not only has been going on, it is still going on. And this makes my sharing quite challenging. Often if we talk about history, we can take certain perspective or discuss about it, but we're talking about something that is actually happening right now. And, you know, just for example, my son was in the reserve service, is now in the South, and I haven't been in contact with him in the last 24 hours, so I really don't know what is his situation. So these are the things in the background, but I'd like to kind of think a moment, who is involved in this confrontation? We tend to think that we're talking about just Israel and Palestine or Palestinian factions, but actually it's on a much larger scale. Alongside Israel, there are some Western democrats that support Israel, and along the other side, we call it, it's kind of an informal name. We talk about the axis of resistance that has Iran and Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and more that are involved on that side, also supported by Russia and China. So it's a kind of a global scale. It's hard to deal with it if we think in a narrow way of just two sides on one location confronting. The interests are big in what is taking place here, as we heard also from David's introduction. The whole world is involved in one way or another. But we must remember that it is not the only conflict that is taking place in the Middle East. In the past 10 years, we had a devastating war, civil war in Syria, and the high toll of almost 600,000 people dead, and so many more displaced that had displaced in their country, displaced around the world. The Yemen war, that close to 400,000 people lost their lives there with poverty and hunger and very, very heartbreaking situations. And in addition, we have the Kurdish struggle with the Turks, we have Egypt with the insurgents in Sinai, we have Libya's civil war, we have the situation in Iraq with different militias, Iranian-backed militias. So the entire Middle East is in upheaval for a long time. And it seems that we don't know how to take a turn from that direction into the direction of, to the direction of peace and reconciliation. But when we look at the larger picture, as we mentioned earlier, there is a struggle that is not only pinpointed at the two peoples. I see it as a struggle on a large scale between different cultures or philosophies of life. We see fundamentalism, sometimes we call it radicals or extremists, where it's sometimes characterized by very strong religious authority and depriving people of their human rights. We see that in communism, the denial of God on one hand, and also the deprivation of human rights. And but we must admit that also when we look at the large conglomerates today around the world, they also use different methods of controlling people through information. And often we feel it's all about power, money, position, and a strong desire for world hegemony. What about democracies? Democracies, at best, they are allowing for freedom of speech, for dialogue, for peaceful transfer of power. And in general, they emphasize human rights. But on the other hand, democracies are not free from moral decay. And we see also deterioration of many important institutions within democracies. So when we think about that and we compare the different systems, one thing that comes to our mind is that changing the system in itself may not bring a solution to the situation. Some of you remember the earlier last century's revolutions in Africa, where one regime was often replaced by another, but not necessarily making life better for the people. So we have been experiencing that a revolt and a change of regime or a change of system of governance not necessarily brings the solution that we aspire to or we hope for. We have to take a look at the human construct. The human problem cannot be solved just by changing the external system. One of the things that we can say at this point is that it is important to overcome the tendency we often have to demonize the other or to blame the other. It's very easy to be drawn into it in a time of despair, in a time of difficulty, in a time of loss or confusion. It's easy for us to look for someone to blame, and it's often the other. We'll go into it a bit later, but I'd like to mention also on the backdrop of the very green picture of that was painted here in the Middle East, that there have also been breakthroughs. And it's important to highlight them because they point to the right direction. They prove that even amidst that confusion and that seeming hopeless situation, things can change. And they encourage us to think and to work towards that change. So, for example, we can take the first peace treaty between Egypt and Israel in 1979, and the next important peace treaty with Jordan in 1994, and most recently, the Abraham Accords in 2020, which brought, in our opinion, tremendous hope. And we still hope that they'll continue and develop and change the situation. So let's keep that in mind while we are bearing the heaviness of the current situation of the conflict. In the Western world, often we look at a way to deal with conflict by transition from violent conflicts to non-violent conflicts. Often the violent conflicts are led by men and the non-violent conflicts are led by women, most often. But still, we believe that approach, Western world approach, believes that conflicts are here to stay. And what I'd like to bring this evening to you is a little bit a different approach, and that is of our founders that were introduced by Mr. Carlo earlier. And we like to, we call them in a fond way, Father and Mother Moon. We feel close with them as our founders. They have dedicated their life for world peace. They have searched every possible way to work toward world peace. And in fact, the many organizations they have established, all of them have somehow world peace in the main title. And the way they look at things, of course, looking at the root cause, but before we go into that, the root cause of conflict, but before we go into that, the ideal structure they look at and the solution for the world situation is not based on just a balance between nation states, but they look at the world as one big family in which the diversity of color, race, culture, and so on are only highlighting the beauty of the Creator. And so when we look at the world with this kind of model, we have to ask ourselves then, what is then the reason that if the world is supposed to be according to what Father and Mother Moon is showing us, why the world is such a chaos? Why individuals and nations behave sometimes in such a painful way as we're discussing today? Well, they see the root cause with a human alienation, with our first human beings' alienation from God, which caused an internal separation between our own mind and body, conflict inside ourselves, and then conflict within the family, conflict within tribes, societies, even nations, that is evident until today. And so what they have been proposing is a process of restoration in which we strive to restore our relationship with our Creator, which we call the heavenly parents, the parent position, and with one another as brothers and sisters, and to melt the barriers that exist between people. So if we take after them as role models, emphasizing that parental role, then we cannot take sides in a conflict that is in front of us. Taking sides would only empower side A or side B, but will not bring eventually a solution. The grudge will stay with the winner or the loser. So the parent feels pain when either one of his children is involved in any kind of struggle, certainly with one another, brothers and sisters. And so he tried to elevate their consciousness to understand that they must live an exemplary life by living for the sake of the other in an unselfish way. In other words, they see the root cause of the problem and falling into ignorance and into selfishness or greed, which lead us to forget who we are. So we have to see ourselves with that kind of eyes of a parent. And from that point of view, like we saw in that video in the introduction, we can embrace ourselves from different religion, different culture, different races. So in conclusion, I like to really give tribute to Mother Moon. Father Moon has already passed into the afterworld, and Mother Moon is still with us, but she is leading very courageously this world movement for peace by helping us to see that kind of parental view being manifested in all walks of life. So with that, I'd like to conclude my short sharing and return the floor to David. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
רכישת רוח ים מנשבת מאי שם וכביסה מתנפנפת לצילי החומה بين الأرض والسماء ناس كتير بعيشوا سوا ما تخافوا تحلموا بالسلام والأمان متى يمسوا خمات הפחד ושבתי מגלותי ייפתחו שעריי אל הטוב האמיתי
I want to thank you for standing up for peace alongside your Palestinian sisters. I want to thank you and to let you know that in the world that we live in, peace is possible only when women of integrity and faith stand up for the future of their children. Congratulations. It is my hope that you will continue to battle for peace in a constructive way. And I look forward to the day that I will come and join you. Thank you for the children of Israel. Thank you for the children of Palestine. Thank you. Peace. Shalom.
From the north to the south, from the west to the east, hear the prayer of the mothers. Bring them peace, bring them peace. From the north to the south, from the west to the east.
Thank you very much, Howard. That song of prayer for the mothers of Palestine and the mothers of Israel catches something of the hope for peace, I think. Thank you. You shared some of your story and some of a perspective that can be helpful. Recently, I sent you a video of a TED talk, which I had watched, and it was between an Israeli and a Palestinian from just a month or so ago. The Israeli man had lost his parents on October the 7th, and the Palestinian had lost many relatives since that date. And I want to read some quotations from what they say in that TED talk as they try together to reach beyond the barriers that are there. Here is a first statement. The first step in reaching a shared future is knowing the other side's narrative. Our stories have grown wider and wider apart, but they meet in the future. And the Palestinian man speaking, it is not that we are not angry. We are angry, but we do not let anger drown us in hate. And then, what can I do to make things better? Hope is like an action, something you do. So I wanted to share that because in some way, I know you'd seen it before, I sent it to you beforehand. I wonder if you'd like to comment on that in light of what you said earlier yourself.
Yeah, thank you, David. There is an organization called the Bereaved Parents. It has some hundreds of individuals and families that have lost their loved ones, and it composed equally of Israeli and Palestinians. They're very active for over 20 years. I've come to know them. And this kind of sharing that you've seen on TED Talk actually takes place very often, even now, even in the midst of this kind of confrontation. So what comes to my mind is that the same situation can lead to a very different approach in our life. And that depends on our life view. And what we'd like to promote is to take even the most painful and difficult situation and turn it into internal power that inspire us to work toward peace, to make sure that this will not be the fate of our children and our grandchildren and our loved ones. So the decision, whether we take the most devastating situation and turn it into an internal power, or we fall into the pitfall of grudge and hatred and desire for revenge, this is our human responsibility. On the very first day of this war, I lost my nephew. He was a volunteer working in the party in the South, and he lost his life right on the very same day. So things do not pass by us. We mourn, we feel pain, but we have to look deep inside our soul and our heart and see what we believe in and decide which direction to take. This, I believe, is our human emotional responsibility.
Thank you. I'm going to give you another example, which is similar in a way. A colleague of ours, a couple in Birmingham, do a lot of work for peace. And the wife, Patricia, was on many of the visits to Israel and Palestine pictured in the video that we saw earlier. And she has great compassion for the Palestinian people. She feels so much their pain, and she's often calling me up and saying, look, this is what's happening in Gaza. And they're amazing people. They're doing just what you said, actually. They're overcoming it, and they're still looking for peace despite the suffering that's happening to them. But one time when she was coming back, she tells the story that she prayed to God and said, I'm afraid I failed as a mediator because I only feel one side suffering. I don't feel the other. And beside her on the plane sat an Israeli lady who said, I had a dream of you last night, and I need to speak to you. And she spoke for the whole tour, the whole trip back of her suffering. And Patricia had a door into another world of suffering that she didn't have before. When she gave a talk the other day, she quoted this statement from the English poet Longfellow, and I think it helps us. If we could read the secret histories of our enemies, we should find in each person's life sorrow and suffering enough to disarm all hostilities. Again, maybe you can comment on it.
Thank you for this sharing. What comes to my mind is that we need all to be engaged, to meet people, to listen to their story, to listen to their narratives, even if it's completely opposite to ours or where we come from. Because this is the beginning point of a change, helping us to see from a higher point of view. Most of those experiences that you share happen between individuals that came to meet each other seemingly by, just an opportunity, but it's a life-changing experience. When you meet someone that comes from the so-called other side, which we believe we are all on the same side, but when this happens, this is the point where we have to allow ourselves to change and to take a different point of view.
So your words put me in the position to give you a hard question, because some came through. And I'm just going to read you the question as it came, but I'm giving you a little warning. The first question is, when did you arrive in Israel? And the second question is the cause of Israeli-Palestinian conflict born through the occupation by the Israeli military and colonization? Now, we know this is a very common perspective. I thought it's better for you to hear that and give some response to it.
So I was not responsible for my arrival to Israel. It's my parents' responsibility. I was born in 1957 in Haifa. I think that both Israelis and Palestinians were once called, you remember, Palestine. In other words, the outcome of the nation states in our region at the end of the Ottoman Empire, basically the British and the French divided the area into different countries. So I think that when we look at the situation right now, it cannot be seen just from a snapshot of any particular year. You can take 1948, you can take 67, but I think we should go back and see how things were played by the empires of the time who divided the area. And like in Africa, certain divisions created sometimes problems that remained. Originally, and definitely from our perspective, there is a place for everyone to live in harmony and peace. It's a matter of concept, whether it's a dividing concept or uniting concept. So by dividing, you can point out as a cause of a problem at any point you pick in history. But if you think about uniting, then I think you can look at any point as an opportunity to come together and to live in peace and harmony. I believe it was possible in many times in the past, and it's certainly possible in the future.
Thank you. I'd like you to talk a little bit about a project we've been working on for actually a couple of years now. And you were the one who encouraged us to develop this, and it's now reached a certain point. If you look at the UPF website, you'll find that we are partnering with Project Cure to provide medical aid to Palestine. And I thought you could say a few words about how this has come about over the past couple of years.
Yeah, thank you, David, for this opportunity to share about the program. It's actually Cure is an organization based in the United States of America, and it donates huge amounts of medical aid to many, many countries around the world. Some emergency aid, but also more advanced equipment that are given to hospitals. So in one of our webinars a couple of years ago, we came to know Dr. Douglas Jackson, who is the founder of Cure. And immediately after the program, we communicated and we thought about maybe developing something in the West Bank, bringing medical aid to hospitals and helping in particular rehabilitation. But eventually, for different bureaucratic reasons, this has been postponed, and now the focus is, of course, more to the more acute situation in Gaza. So the focusing is, at the moment, bringing emergency aid to Gaza, and the Cure organization have been able to do so already. They have managed to deliver a large amount of medical aid, but right now as UPF, we're trying to work side by side and to finance more deliveries of medical aid, both to Gaza and to the West Bank. So it's still in process, but hopefully it can fulfill the great needs for such aid. Yeah.
But I believe it's also the case that about a little less than a year and a half ago, you were organizing meetings with the leadership of the Palestinian Authority to set up aid long before this war started.
Right. That has been sort of blocked a bit by the situation. But yes, the original plan came all the way to the assistant of the Palestinian president. He authorized it, and we're just about to begin exploration and for equipping many hospitals with refurbished medical equipment. So this was on the way, but unfortunately the recent events toppled that, and the focus was diverted, as you mentioned.
Another quote. This is from an ambassador for peace, whom I happen to know, is Assyrian. And this lady wrote to me some time ago, not today. I know I'm Arab and this is Palestinian, but my job is to bring peace and not take sides. Actually, she said, this is why I haven't posted anything anywhere, because she'd stopped posting because of this, even though she is an Arab person. I thought that is quite similar to some of the things you were encouraging.
Yeah. Yeah. this really brings me to maybe stress even more the importance of not taking sides. When we say not to take sides, it doesn't mean that we don't have an opinion or we are complacent or we don't care. But it means that we do not put oil on fire. We do not empower acts of aggression from any side. We always have to take a position where we calm ourselves down and we try to look for a way where we can give a positive contribution to the situation, a parental care. So I really admire the person you quoted and for her approach. And as much as we all want people to side with us, either that side or this side, eventually this cannot lead to any viable solution or long-term solution. The long-term solution comes from internal change of our own attitude toward ourselves, towards others, towards the world, towards our parent in heaven. Taking sides will not lead us to any possible solution. So I really echo what this lady said.
Okay, so here's a question that you may not have expected. Do you run a coffee shop in Israel?
Yes, I do. I mean, it's actually my son does. I mean,
tell us a bit about its name and what you think the name means underneath the name.
Yeah, well, the name of the shop is You Need Coffee, but the idea came from my wife. She thought about it. But she always said, what you really need is God. We need God. So maybe it's not a popular name that if you put that on a coffee shop, but that's the heart behind it. In other words, when we give something, whatever it is, we have to give it with the heart that God is behind it and he's trying to reach and give the best to each and every one of us.
Well, thank you very much, Hod. I'm very grateful for your answers and your sharing with us. I'm very grateful for UPF Italy for giving us the time to share this. I know we didn't answer all the questions, but I think it was probably good to finish at this point and pass back to il direttore, Carlo.
Sì, ok. Beh, è stata un ascolto davvero intenso, devo dire. Come avevo accennato all'inizio, lo esprimo per chi si è collegato, credo si sia compreso, non sia trattata di una, come dire, di una disquisizione politica, ma davvero si è andati in profondità su una visione che noi condividiamo parecchio, a parte il fatto che siamo parte di un team che opera insieme nell'ambito di UPF. Spero davvero, mi auguro che questo abbia trasmesso a chi ha ascoltato una modalità in qualche modo diversa da quello che è proposto da tutta l'area informativa e dei media quotidiani rispetto a questo tema, perché generalmente ci si pone nella condizione quasi di prendere come dire, le parti di una o dell'altra parte e parteggiare per l'uno o per l'altro. La situazione, come è stato spiegato, è complessa, serve un salto di qualità, serve un salto di coscienza. Questo riferimento a un cuore parentale, che significa nell'inglese parental heart, un cuore di genitore. Noi riteniamo che la politica stessa debba assumere questo tipo di approccio e quindi ci fa piacere che si sia spaziato su questi pensieri e su queste riflessioni questa sera. Ringrazio veramente di cuore Hod per questa sua testimonianza ampia, ringrazio di cuore David, ecco, per aver accompagnato questo dialogo, questo colloquio. Naturalmente ringrazio anche tutto il nostro team che invito anche sullo schermo, così possiamo fare anche una foto ricordo insieme. Accenno a chi è ancora in ascolto, la videoregistrazione di questo incontro noi provvederemo ad inviarla naturalmente a tutti coloro che si sono iscritti e che magari non hanno avuto magari possibilità all'ultimo momento di poter essere collegati. Ormai i tempi non mi dilungo oltre, anche se sarebbe bello approfondire queste tematiche, ma non mi dilungo oltre perché vedo che abitualmente il nostro Peace Forum ha la durata di un'ora. Torneremo con questi nostri incontri di UPF Peace Forum, ve ne daremo informazione naturalmente a tempo debito. Ci auguriamo che possiate portare con voi nel cuore qualcosa di profondo sulle riflessioni di questa sera. Un cordiale saluto davvero a voi tutti, buona serata e buon proseguimento.